Okay, so this is the last in the contract series for May, and June we'll start really diving as we do our series more into insurance and hurricanes and all that kind of stuff, because hurricane does start in
Season starts next week.
like 3 days or yes, something like that. It's a great opportunity for us to really do some marketing. I think start talking to people about it. We have some of those hurricane guides. We'll get some more on there. We took advantage of Memorial Day and dropped flags off at all of our farm areas and things like that. I think people need to see us out in the community, not just talking about real estate sales. They can talk to anybody about real estate sales, and they get burnt out by realtors talking about real estate all the time. I think we're very unique, and Liz was there yesterday watching realtors in action.
That was impressive.
It really was. I was so proud of being a realtor yesterday. There was a proposed ordinance in the city of Cape Coral wanting to raise the registration rate for rental properties 1,700% on an annual basis. Just not
Annual,
just nutsy cuckoo. So the realtors got on top of it, and we presented a really good argument for it. Nobody was overly emotional or anything. Lots of facts and figures.
You did a great job of being positive.
Oh,
Making your points, but in a positive way.
thank you. Well, that's it,
Proud of you.
And thank you. We want to keep them on our side too, because it's going to come back up in a new way. We're going to be involved in it. But those are the things you want to let your customers know too, because what makes us different? Like, you're involved in the foundations and stuff. If you get pictures, by the way, that would be really great, because we're trying to put together like some PR pieces of here's all the different things our realtors are doing in the community, because realtors care, and younger people really want people who are involved and care and give back. And I think that'll make us stand out a little bit more than some of these other companies, because they're really not about the consumer anymore, and it's really kind of sad. All they're talking about is money. People will pay more if they get perception of quality. I mean, all you have to do is look at the price of a Louis Vuitton bag. And is a Louis any better, than a Target bag?
No.
But it's perception. So am I the Louis of real estate, or am I the Target of real estate? It's kind of silly. Hey, always. Yeah. So we kind of covered condo writers, pretty well last week when we started going through the writers, but I wanted to just specifically work on that and condos and homeowner associations in general, because we all sell in there. You live in one, Jeff, and you live in one, obviously. And I know one problem we've been having with title companies and owners not understanding are estoppels. That's not really an addenda, but they don't understand it. And there's a really good article, and I'll post it and send it out to you, from Florida Realtors. And it talks about this. And way back in 2017, the Florida legislature put a cap on the estoppel fees, because the associations were getting stupid. And they were charging $1,000 for an estoppel letter, which is Florida law. You have to have it when you sell. Yep. And it's up to the seller, not the buyer. And it's really not the title company's responsibility. They usually do it as a favor to us, but it's the seller's responsibility to get that from the association. So when you're on the listing side, you want to make sure your seller knows. And this is a really good article to give them on it. Yeah, because there's a whole checklist. Tells them what has to be on the estoppel. And I think that's really, I didn't realize that much detail was involved in it. So this is kind of cool. And if you've got the buyer, you've got to remind them. So they can't charge, and that's the thing you got to check on, because they will try, especially when they're from out of area. Can you say, man? So they can't charge more than $299 for non-delinquent accounts. If the homeowners or the condo owner is delinquent, they can add on another $179 on top of the $299. And then if you want it faster, which is about the only way to get anything nowadays, they can add on another $119. So it can go up.
It's up to $400.
But I would tell the sellers, do the expedited version no matter what, because title companies are slow, even not the expedited version. And the last thing you want to do is hold this up. And sometimes lenders want to see the estoppel. with the figures before they do the final approval on there. So the faster you get it, the better. So that's my little thing on estoppel. I mean, we've all seen it go sideways, and the sellers are like, "What's an estoppel? Why do I have to do that?" You know, and then you've got title, right? And then they don't want to pay for it.
And then they get mad, they say, well, I've always paid for payments.
Yeah, and who pays for it? And then you're at closing, and who pays the $400? The realtor. You know, why is it we have to pay for somebody else's lack of consideration all the time? And we do it because we want to make it happen. But if we can do all the preemptive striking, then it will ultimately be more money in our pocket. As much as we love selling real estate and helping people, it's ultimately about making money so we can feed our families and do our good altruistic work and go out in the boat. And go out in the boat. So I've got two things. First, we'll address homeowners association because that's probably a little easier, maybe. That's the rider's gotten quite big.
Yeah.
They added it up, and it's really a disclosure. It's not an addendum. But as we talked about it last week, that part A, the disclosure summary, anything that's in bold and capital letters, they're screaming at you. That means it's important. And that's where the Florida statutes come in. They have to give this to the prospective purchaser. How many of the listing agents don't do that? They give it to you with the contract, you know, maybe.
Yeah, I find mainly it's the realtors that are from out of area or not living in that particular community that don't know, so they really don't know how to even fill it out.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly correcting it in advance, because they'll pre-fill it out and it's wrong.
Yeah, you may have to do your work for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's usually, if you've got the buyer and you don't see it attached in the MLS, which makes it the best way to do it. Put it in there, get the numbers in there, because if they don't, because if they don't get it,
And they just have to edit to finish the signature.
because the buyer can cancel up to 3 days.
Yeah.
So you wait till 3 days before closing, or you try and do it at closing, the buyer can walk. I don't like to walk to work. I like to drive to work. So I do not want the buyer to walk. You know. Yeah, and that's a really, really, really good thing. The first page.
Yeah, JD, one other thing there, I think agree, a lot of times when you have a community, you have a master fee and then there's a reserve. I always split it up. A lot of realtors don't. They'll just put on the full amount and that. And I like, no, at the end of the day, they should know the difference, the splits.
Right.
So I have a lot of questions the realtors saying, well, wait, your number's wrong. It's supposed to be.
That I would do on the second page.
And then the second page is where, right, I break
Yeah,
it
because
down.
that's special assessments on the front page.
Right.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be in the estoppel.
Yes.
So if the sellers ask for the estoppel letter earlier, then we're okay. And it's good for 30 days. Yes.
Wasn't there a new rule that now the buyers are entitled to 1 year's worth of minutes from the meeting so they can see if there's a special assessment?
I don't know if it's 1 year. You could be right on that.
Maybe that's a suggestion.
They are, but they are now including that in the financials and the budget and all of that.
Good.
That the minutes are that the minutes now need to be that they need to be given them.
So the lender can look and see if there's no.
Right, lenders, so sellers who are absentee don't necessarily pay attention to the board of directors meetings, and they slide all kinds of wonderful things in those little meetings. So yeah, you're right. You want to get as much of that as you can.
I always call the association president, and then I'll also call the association management company, because sometimes they're not on the same page.
Yeah, if you can find out them.
Especially with reserves and things like that, and what's going on with insurances, and is there an assessment? Well, we think so, but we're not. Well, what, we didn't like, yes or no? Has it been presented at the meeting? Is the minutes in your saying it's going to happen?
Yeah.
You have to go off.
Yeah, because
you know what happens, right? The day they close, the next day there's an assessment.
Yeah, but if they're just having conversations but not putting out for bids or going anything forward, that's really more of a rumor than anything else. And as transaction brokers, we want to tell what we know that's concrete. When you want to be really careful about rumors, and because it can come back no matter what level of agency you're at. If there's a rumor and you scare somebody away and then the rumor doesn't come true, the customer might come back and say, I really, really wanted to buy that. But Liz told me that they might be putting in a $15,000 sidewalk, and there's no sidewalk. And I could have bought that condo. So, yeah, you want to be real careful about that. Yes, there's special assessments.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest. They've got the approval on here. It tells you if some associations are not required to have approval.
Right.
And some are, but it also talks about making application. Do they have to have any kind of interviews? It's letting them know that. Some people just don't get it, and then you've got people who are king of the world kind of stuff. I don't have to have an interview and blah, blah, blah. They should be lucky that I'm buying, in their community. But it also says the buyer and the seller shall sign and deliver any documents required by the association.
Right.
They've got to make themselves available, use diligent effort to timely obtain association approval. The buyer's got to move right away. And a lot of buyers won't. They don't want to spend the $150 application fee until they know they've got their loan. Oh, yeah.
Errors and omissions insurance just got paid, and it went up, and we have never had a claim in 15 years. And the last 3 years in a row, it has gone up 65% every single year. Every single year. We have the least expensive provider that's out there, and we have a $5,000 deductible just to keep the rates somewhere near unreasonable. It's just crazy. I mean, we've never had a claim. We probably never will have a claim. At a $5,000 deductible, we can always negotiate and get it done. Mm-hmm. The closest we have ever come was 7 years after we closed something. We had a potential claim for defective drywall. And they hired the attorney, they did all of that kind of stuff. We called the and said, well, is there a possibility? So they made a little note, there might be a possibility. We had enough documentation to prove that we had done all of our jobs. It never went anywhere, and we didn't have to pay a penny.
They had an inspector, right?
The buyer 7 years prior was recommended by the home inspector to have a defective drywall test. Mm-hmm. She declined.
Oh, there you go. You won.
She declined.
You won.
And we had every email from the inspector, the report to her, copy, and she said, I was never notified. And we had every smoking gun that could possibly be there because we had it all in app files. And I never delete my emails. I have like 35,000 emails. I never get rid of them. And they were all in there. I'm a paranoid person. Perfect. And it was in there. So, we've never had to have a claim. We don't want to have a claim. So if you do your job right, you usually don't have a claim, and you can defend yourself before it gets that far. And that's really, really good. The other thing that most people don't know when you go to condos is everybody's seeing condo governance form. It's kind of like the energy efficiency brochure. It's kind of like, I think I know about that.
I've never read it.
It's 5 pages of stuff. It's okay. It's basically telling them their responsibilities of how the condo board works and what their responsibilities are as an owner.
I give them all one of those.
Yeah, give it when you list it. Give it when you and give it when you sell it. Hi, how are you? What I do like to tell, there is a board of directors for condos have to take a class now on how to be a condo director. And anybody can take the class. Mm-hmm. And I think if you've never been in a community of any kind, we've always been a single family homeowner, I would say take that course. Learn how the governance of your condo or how your HOA works, because it'll make it so much easier if you know the rules of the road. Yeah. And you may decide after you do that you aren't good at playing well with others or living in the sandbox with everybody. And there are people who should never be in a condo. My husband was one who could never live in a community where they told you what to do. Can you imagine that? Anyway, we were just talking about the condo governance form. So I printed one up for you just in case you want to read it. And my favorite place to tell you to put things to read.
Yeah.
Put it in the room that you spend at least 10 minutes in, the porcelain palace, as we say.
I have a container that contains all these documents if I ever need to.
There you go. Yeah, and they're all in app files in that. But you want to make sure you give it to your seller, give it to your buyer. Read it, kind of know what's in it. They may never read it, but at least we are required to hand it to them.
I always email it, so you got a record.
There you go. Like lead-based paint and that wonderful energy efficiency brochure that we are still required to give out. And it's every improved property, so it includes condos and homeowners associations. And if we do it by email, then we're saving trees. We're saving energy. I don't know. At least it's not powered by nuclear power or something.
So being on part of the board at Miranda, I had to take the courses that certify
Oh, yeah?
you on all the rules and regs and about homeowners associations and stuff. So you get a little certificate and they say, okay, things are great. Now you can deal with the people and when they ask questions and what's going on and and how things are voted in and voted out and so on and so forth.
Well, that's really good from you from a sales standpoint.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know it better than any of the other realtors in the area because they don't have that experience and courseware, for.
I'd be promoting that a lot,
I do,
you know.
yeah, if it works.
Tim Bine, Condo King.
If they're on the edge, Hey, Condo King. No, don't do that.
Ah, come on, you can have a lot of fun with that one.
That's a good moniker.
We'll get you a crown from Burger King.
It reminds me of that guy that was, what was he called, something King, Tiger King or something. It's like, oh, man.
Oh. Well, when I sold condos, I was the condo queen.
You were?
I sold more condos in Coral than any other realtor.
Wow, okay.
I beat the condo king. There was a condo king. And that's why I said, well, I'm going to beat you and I'm going to be condo queen. And I was, so the condo writer, that has changed dramatically. This was redone in December, so this was the latest because it reflects all that lovely stuff. Okay, do you want to hear the lovely ugly stuff about condos? What's going on? Or goodness, I mean, we have to know condos. People are going to start looking again at condos. I think now that the dust has settled a little bit, and I don't mean that in a bad way from all of the things that have happened. People are still going to look at condos as a viable alternative to housing. There are a lot of single people who just don't want the responsibility of taking care of a house. So it's still there, but it's no longer, well, it's cheaper to buy a condo than it is to buy a house. It's going to be a lifestyle choice. And that's good. You know, in Florida, we have more condos in Florida than any other state in the country, which is kind of interesting. So we're kind of the forerunners of condo law. All the good stuff, all the bad stuff, that's us. We know the market's soft, and it really has gotten quite a bit softer. The sales are down like 16% from last year. That's significant. And prices are only down 6%. How about that? I mean, that's pretty good. We'll see how that one. That's statewide. So statewide, the median condo price right now is $316,000, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's lower than a house.
Mm-hmm.
So it could potentially be affordable, but they've been hit, whammied all over the place. The insurance, the costs have really hit them. The mortgage rates are still causing some affordability issues. The association fees, because they have to build the reserves now, have put a lot of numbers out of reach for people. As the mortgage rates have settled out, people are getting used to that. We've got new players coming in with the insurance, and if we have a nice, quiet
Hurricane
season, I think that's going to help. We've been in the reserves now for 3 years, so the condo associations, a lot of them are already filled. Are they getting much closer to filling in the reserves? So that's going to make it a little bit more stable. So with the prices coming down and the fees going up, hopefully that will balance out. But it's going to be, with condos, it's going to be a lot of having this kind of consultation with the consumer, addressing all their fears.
Well, the inspections that they're required to do after Surfside have added assessments to a lot of condo developments.
Yes.
And as a condo person, I love them because it gives me the freedom to just close the door and go.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to make sure that they're insuring their buildings to a certain amount and what's the deductible on the insured building. And the closer you get to the water, Lexington development, for instance, down by Bass Road, They got hit hard with Ian, so the insurance rates and the flood zone and all the other stuff, they're paying dearly on that. So that's where inland a little bit is not too bad when you don't get hit with all of those assessments and repair work.
It just depends on what your lifestyle is. I mean, look at how many people keep coming to the water. They don't care. How many times have the houses gone down in Myrtle Beach? How many times have they gone down in Captiva? But they're coming. They're still going to be there. People want to be on the water. We human beings are just, we do what we like to do and we really don't care. We just whine about it, but we figure out how to make it happen. You know, you want a boat, you're going to figure out how to get a boat. You want to fish, you'll figure it out. You know, and our job is to help figure out how to make it affordable for them so we don't lose them. And we've seen a small uptick in people inquiring about stuff here, which I think is really nice. So hopefully that will translate into more sales as we go. The condo rider is also something that is required. This is a rider, this is not a disclosure, so it's an addenda. The part of the law is on page 5. Now here's the fun part. The law simply says that they have to give, that's the non-developer disclosure, the buyer hereby acknowledges the buyer has been provided a current copy, page 2.
No,
Page 2, number 5.
Yeah.
This agreement is voidable by buyer by delivering written notice.
Yeah.
If you never get this from the seller, you never add this and it doesn't become part of the contract, Florida law still holds. That buyer still has the right to cancel within 3 days after they receive the documents, whether it's in the addenda or not.
Okay.
And a lot of agents don't realize that, well, you didn't get the addenda, so you don't get the 3 days. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
No, that's Florida statutes, Florida law. Go away, you can't do it. You gotta do it. The weird part is how they count the days. Remember on contracts,
Yeah.
it's calendar days,
Yeah.
straight through. However,
It's a business day.
this is business days.
Right.
So if you get your condo documents on Friday, you strategically have more days. So if I were the listing agent, I'd give it to you on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, you know. I would try to avoid Friday because I don't want them to have extra time.
Right.
Right. See, what I do is, in advance of any contract, I forward my buyers the documents to say, you might want to read these first before we start going down this path. And then you find out that, oh my gosh, I can't have a dog over 40 pounds. So I'm
Yeah.
done.
You can forward or put them in MLS.
Oh, I always have it there from a listing person, absolutely. Or, yeah, I can put it in buyers.
Yeah.
I do that too, yes. I put it in,
Yeah.
well, I put it in MLS, I put it in app files too. So the app files have it.
There you go. Yeah, because if we can't, if he's not around, we can send it off. But yeah, or ask if your buyer is really interested. Say to the listing agent, hey, we're going to need the financials. We're going to need this. Do you have it already? And if they don't have it,
Mhm.
you know, then you know what kind of a deal you're going to be working with.
Yeah.
And all right, yeah,
Okay.
we're the conductor of this. We want to make sure it all happens. But I wanted to bring that to your attention. So if it's in the MLS,
Yes.
the listing, that means it's really been delivered to the buyer. You make sure the selling agent has received it. And and that's what I would ask if I got the addenda and it says the 3 days, say, did you not give it to your buyer already?
Right.
You know. So make sure that they do it. Sometimes you'll see it and they don't even check either one.
Yeah.
Which one is preferable to check if you're the listing agent?
Depends. The thing is, they get 3 days to cancel. This is the only Florida piece of real estate that they have a cancellation period automatically granted. So the sooner they get the documents, the sooner they lose that 3-day thing. That's the same thing with a homeowners association. If they don't get the disclosure, they've got 3 days then to cancel. So we want to make sure that we give everything to them right up front.
Right, I always end up checking the first one anyways by default, but it's all been communicated in advance and I receive acknowledgement from my buyers or what have you. If I'm a listing person, I make sure that was checked, right, so.
Yeah, that's
And
what you
the
want.
documents are always on MLS, so I call the listing agent as well. Have you provided it? Did you read them?
Yeah. And do you know what we're supposed to have? That's it. They don't always understand what they have, and it laid it all out there very carefully. The declaration of condos, the articles of incorporation, the bylaws and the rules, And then a copy of, and this has been added, is the copy of the most recent annual financial statement and annual budget. That was not in there very specifically, just said financials before.
Right, right.
And the frequently asked questions and answers
FAQs,
document.
yeah,
The Q&A is a requirement of condo associations annually. They have to update it every year.
yeah.
Tiny condos that are self-governed don't necessarily follow that. Big associations, you can pretty much rest assured that it's on there. And that Q&A talks about if there's any kind of lawsuits going and the dogs and, you know, that's the most important document I want to see is I want to see the Q&A right away.
Yeah.
Because it has the fees and it has the lawsuits and it has the pets and stuff and the rental, and it has rental
And the rental stuff.
information. So the Q&A is really, to me, that's the most important thing that I want to get.
Yeah.
And if you get the annual budget, that has the reserves in it. So that tells you where their financial picture is.
Correct.
But ask for the minutes if you want them, because they don't have to have, they're not required to give them to you.
Quick question.
Yes.
On the top of this form, they have buyer's initials and sellers. Is buyer's initials sufficient to prove you gave it to them?
Yeah.
Because there's no signature page on the back.
There's no signature page and there's no initials on each page. It's kind of weird. I personally
When I
like,
listed, I asked the seller to
Yeah,
review it.
that's it.
yeah, in my mind, I would, like our contracts, you initial each page and publish. I would like that, but you don't have to. An attorney has advised us, if it's initialed there, it's acceptable. Same thing on a residential contract. If they skip one page with an initial, you're gonna argue that it's included. And 99.99% of the judges will follow that, because there's your whole intent. If you sign on the last page, they're gonna say basically the same thing.
Right.
We like it because it's a CYA.
And that's the difference when you have the contract, you check it off when you send it off in app files. If you sign or initial in one spot, it goes throughout the rest of the document.
Sure.
I uncheck that to force them to go to each page.
Well, there you
So
go.
initial.
Either-
I was advised a long time ago by someone that worked here to make sure I did that.
Who was that?
Janet.
My bride. No, my wife, Janet.
Janet was our original compliance officer.
Everything had to be right, trust me.
And she was, yes. Janet was amazing.
Thank you.
She retired. She did not quit. She retired. And now she runs Jim.
Yeah.
But he's got the best paperwork in the whole office.
I tell you what.
Okay.
He said to me on the way out today, make sure you wear your pin.
Oh, there you go. All right, association approval, right? Most of if you have to fill this out because the listing agent didn't put it in MLS, I always err on the part of that that the association's approval is required. Because the majority of condos do have to be required. So I put that in there. It defaults on there that the buyer being approved by blank, right, within 5 days prior to closing, within blank 5 days after effective date, then the seller shall initiate the approval process with the association. That's when he does that. He asks for the letter of estoppel. Their association may have an intent to sell form. You'll see that on our checklist. That's if applicable, and a lot of associations want the seller, the minute you list it, to do an intent to sell. So when you list it, call the association right away. They love when we call them, because then we're asking, oh, what about open houses? What about signs? What can we do? We want to cooperate with you. We want to help you. It's a kingdom and they hold the keys. It doesn't matter how snotty they are. They run the roost, so we got to make them happy. So make them as happy as you can possibly make them, and you'll find out really fast if your seller has a really bad relationship with the association too, which is why he might be selling. So then the idea is the association, we're going to get rid of Mr. Cranky Pants, and we're going to get you somebody nice. Suck it up. They live or die, and they're the ones who can keep our closing on time, right? But it also says they have to deliver, and the buyer and seller shall deliver the documents required in order to complete the transfer and use diligent effort to obtain such approval. Our buyers are notorious for dragging their feet for the approval because they think it's rubber stamping. Oh, we finally got approval. Oh, we're going to close in 5 days, and then they do the application to the association. Some of the associations have rules that it takes 30 days. You know, even if they never talk to the people, and personal appearances. So we want to make sure this contract does not get terminated, right? Because if the buyer doesn't get approved by the association and everybody's done their job, this contract can be terminated. Yucky pooey. Buyer gets his money, he leaves, seller's mad at us, our wives are mad at us, or our husbands are mad at us because we didn't bring anything, we didn't bring any money home. My kids used to meet me at the door. Hi, sell anything today? Now they're old and they still call me up. Hey, selling it? Right of first refusal. Does everybody understand what right of first refusal is?
Multiple offers.
That's where all those lovely fair housing things come into play. Because there are associations who have ancient rules, and it's amazing. They will use bad words in there. We won't sell to any blanks or any blanks, or we don't want any kids, but they're not but they haven't been identified as a 55 plus over. And they have most of them have right of first refusal. And if you don't know, check does have a right of first refusal. If the association has a right of first refusal, right? Then they have to exercise, and it's all about providing written confirmation to the buyer that the association is not exercising the right, right? They have to do that. If they don't like someone and they want to refuse, there's usually wording in the bylaws and the docs that make the association
Have to buy.
buy the conduct.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there is, the members of the association also have the right in here, but if they turn them down for something that is not legitimate, and this is where we step out of the way and don't argue, because we are not attorneys. I mean, sometimes it's very questionable. They have the right to turn someone down because they're ugly. Ugly's not a protected class. We had a condo that was like a $500,000 condo. This young little rocker guy went under contract. He wanted to live there. He had piercings and tats and stuff. Nice, nice guy, very wealthy because he was a rocker, but he did not look like the kind of person that they wanted. A person with tats that's not a protected class. If he'd been black with tats, he might have a case that he could say, well, they're really doing it because of my color. Or if that tatted person was in a wheelchair, he might have a case. So that's about the only way they can turn you down. If they're mass murderers or child molesters, are they protected classes?
I think that's legitimate, isn't it?
It's a gray area with associations.
That's when you go.
Not approve that, I know.
That's when you go, whoops, you need to talk to an attorney on that.
Right.
Because what your moral feelings may not be illegal, and it's not our case to move that dial. It's
What if it's in a certain distance from, say, a school, and you've got somebody that's a
Right.
registered sexual predator or
but
something?
we don't make the decision.
That
That's-
gets passed to the attorney.
That's where, if they've said that, it comes up, then the association has to do that. And we want the association to take the responsibility for it. It's like this is going political a little bit, but in the contract we had the whole thing about how if you're from China or Iraq or some of these other countries, you can't buy in the United States, or in Florida I should say. We don't have the right to ask. It's in the contract, but we don't have the right to ask. We believe they just have to say, "Oh yeah, I'm from communist China and I want to buy." Are they going to tell you? Unless they give you their driver's license that says they live in, somewhere in one of these countries that you're not allowed to sell, you don't know. It's the same thing like that. I don't ask my customer, are you a child molester? You will have known that from forewarn.
Yeah.
When you work with your buyer, run your forewarn, and then you just might decide that you don't feel comfortable working with that person, and you might want to refer it off to somebody that you don't like.
Basically, it's not in our jurisdiction, leave it alone.
There you go. Not my job, and we like to help everybody. That's our saving grace, and also what gets us into trouble.
Yeah.
But let the association turn them down.
Right.
I mean, and that turning down stuff sometimes happens with dogs, service animals.
Oh, yeah.
Our little service horses or
Yeah.
service animals, or our emotional support animals, all of that kind of stuff. We don't go to battle. We just tell them.
Now, is there a
Versus
definition
what they
for
need to-
aggressive breeds? Because that's come up in some of the conversations.
That's part of Florida law. Yeah, if they haven't, there's an aggressive breed, and then there's a dog, then there's an aggressive animal. If you are a service animal that acts out aggressively, they can evict that dog. They can tell you no.
Oh, yeah.
There's some protection in the law there. Like, my pit bull that has bitten 3 people is my emotional support animal. The odds are he's going to bite somebody else, and there's a legitimate thing. But again, not our job. Just be the source. Say, here's where you need to go. Here's the rules and that kind of stuff. That's really what you want to do with that. So most people don't have a real problem with that. We've occasionally had it. We had that happen. We had a young couple with a 3-year-old child wanting to buy a condo. And it was only a $45,000 condo, cheapy little condo. It's all they could afford. And it was all full of adults. There were no children in it. But it wasn't an adult-only condominium. And they put a written denial. They refused to the couple. Yeah, well, here, take the letter to the attorney, and we got a copy of the letters. And I did make a call to the association, and they said, I do understand, that you've refused the couple. And I just said, did you happen to read the condo rider? We're sending it, who's your association attorney? We want to make sure that we can send this over to them. And they're like, why? I said, well, right of first refusal. If you don't want to sell
They
them,
have to buy.
you don't have to sell to them. But just be prepared to write a check for it, because our seller is expecting to sell it. Oh, let's go talk to our attorney. They went and talked to their attorney, and and a day later, oh, we're going to be so happy to help them and welcome them into the community.
Did the couple know that they were
Volunteer
originally
to
turned down?
babysit too?
They got the letter.
Oh, they did?
They got the association was dumb enough to put it in writing.
Wow.
They should have taken the money and got a better condo.
Well, the seller got the money. The buyer still had to buy it.
Right.
But, we want to make sure everybody wins. That's our job, right? Okay, number 3, fees, assessments, prorations, and that famous word, litigation. Yes. So the seller, and this is the seller who signs it, not us. The seller represents that the current association assessments, now assessments are the monthly fees.
Yeah.
There's special assessments, and installments are blank. And now it's so nice because now it'll check off monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, how it's paid. This also covers in here when you see, and if more than one association assessment. So like if there's layers, like your condo,
Yeah.
there's a condo assessment. Now there's another assessment to the homeowners association, and maybe there's a second one. You want to put that in there. And then if there's any rent on rec areas, because some places don't own the golf courses, that they pay a rental fee. Or I know in North Fort Myers, there's a condo where the tennis courts are owned by a private developer, but they rent them to the associations.
That's a good business if you can get it.
Yeah, somehow it happened. Somehow it happened, and the tennis courts never got conveyed with the property.
Oops.
So they pay the owner of the tennis courts rent. So it's a recreation fee that's in there. Sometimes it's just added into your monthly assessments, and other times it's separate. But they need to know that, especially if you've got a tennis player that is buying specifically for that tennis court. And then they find out, whoops, I might not be able to rent it next year, and then I don't want it at all. So put that in there. And it all says, and it goes right back in, it puts it to the seller. All annual assessments, rent on rec areas, shall be made current by the seller at closing. If they've prepaid, it also allows them to prorate it back. So if the seller paid for a quarterly fee and the buyer thinks he's gonna skate, no. He's gonna pay for the seller. He's gonna pay the seller back. And that's usually what happens.
That's important to know. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And on page 2, it's got fees. Sellers shall at closing pay all fines imposed by the condo association. Any fees if the association charges for providing information about the assessments and fees. So if the buyer goes and asks for what are the assessments and fees and all of that kind of stuff, and they give them a letter, the seller actually is going to get the bill for it. And the seller's going to choke. I don't want to pay the $150 that they're asking. So it's in there already. Most people aren't aware of it. They don't know it. And it's got that big bold letters again. If property is part of a homeowners association, see rider B, which is the first rider that we went through. So if there's, how many associations can there be? There's 2 associations. I would make 2 HOAs because it's naming the community. I think it's just clearer. If you're putting Heritage Palms Master Association, Heritage Palms 5, I'm just making these things up. But that way, I would do one for each association, just to make it easier on the numbers, because you don't want to miscalculate. And we all know fingers can do funny things even on calculators. And then all of a sudden, oh, that's at $1 million instead of $10,000. And zeros can be very, very important. Special assessments and prorations, yay for us. And this is staying specifically within the condo. It's not assessments for governmental assessments. It's specifically within the condo. So seller represents seller is not aware of any special or other assessments that have been levied that's actually in place, right? Or, and this is the other part they've added, now has been an item on the agenda or reported in the minutes of the association, which is why you were wanting to know about the year after, because as it says within 12 months. It's kind of weird because it doesn't require the seller to give 12 months in the minutes. But on the rider for the condo, it's the seller has to say, I don't know of anything. So you're right to ask for them prior to the effective date, except as follows. Boom. So there might be something there and he has to disclose it. So if there's a proposal for putting in sidewalks for $15,000, been on the agenda for the last 12 months, he's supposed to disclose it. Again, if they don't live there, a lot of them really may not be aware of it. They're on auto pay for their dues. They don't pay any attention. They might show up at an annual meeting. They might not. And then B, if special assessments are levied or pending as of effective date, they're disclosed by the seller and may be paid in installments, then who pays it? You can choose who's going to pay it, the buyer or the seller. But again, if the seller's check, then he has to pay it off in closing. Very important, don't leave it blank, because it doesn't have, if it says if left blank, then the buyer gets it. Depending on what side you're on.
Don't do that.
Yeah, but don't do it on purpose, because somebody might be paying assessments for a full year or the entire amount, and I don't want to be that person. If special assessments, okay, where are we at? Oh, and then 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. If special assessments levied or pending exist and have not been disclosed, then the seller shall pay assessments in full at time of closing. So if he's a stinker face and thinks he can get away with it, no, can't do it. But this is where it all gets a little dicey, right? Like if after the effective date, the association imposes a special assessment for improvement work or services, but they're not pending as of the effective date of the contract, then the seller has to pay any amount due before the closing date. And then the buyer picks it up after.
That's fair.
And that's reasonable. But sometimes that can cause problems with buyers getting approval and that kind of stuff. So, and that's why reading the minutes, getting as much information as you can prior to, before everybody wastes all their time and their emotions going to purchase something and then finding out it's not going to work. Okay, and then, okay, a special assessment shall be deemed levied on the date when the assessment has been approved. So they can approve it on April 1st, but it might not go into effect until June 1st. It is now considered a special assessment, so it's there. Association assets and liabilities shall not be prorated. I don't know why that even counts, but it's there. And the litigation, the right to sue, right? Seller represents, seller is not aware of any pending or anticipated litigation affecting the property of the common elements except as follows. Usually that's addressed in those minutes. But if the seller heard a whisper of a lawsuit, and that can be with the insurance companies. Sometimes insurance companies now are coming back to the associations and suing them.
Why?
They may have felt that the association didn't do the work, took the money for a repair.
Oh,
Like on hurricanes, sometimes they will settle numbers, and then they didn't do it. And then now something else breaks and the association makes a claim. Oh, well, you fixed that before the hurricane, or you were supposed to. Oh, they didn't. So now the association might actually sue the association. Or somebody could have hurt themselves at the pool and they're going to sue the association. You know, they don't sue this particular person, they'll go after the association. So if the seller's aware of it, you should put it there. Again, it's in the Q&A, but that's only required to update annually. They don't have to update it if there's a change. So you always want to do your work. Sprinkler system retrofit. We've got so many old condos that don't have sprinkler systems in there. They do have to vote though. They have to look and decide if they wanted to go back in and put sprinkler systems in. And if they don't want to, it just simply says they voted to forego it.
Right.
Because when you put in a sprinkler system, your assessment is huge.
Massive.
Absolutely huge. That is, and that's probably one of the bigger things you'll see within those older condominiums that are 3 stories and up.
Yeah.
Because now the insurance companies and all of that are going to be requiring sprinkler system retrofits. So when you're selling big old condos, be careful. Just be careful. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, we're old. I'm old. Okay, you're not old.
I am too.
You know, sometimes I got to be retrofit. You know?
Oh boy.
Hey, I you know,
Not going there.
who doesn't need a new knee or a new elbow?
Gotta be silent.
Luckily, there's parts available now.
Oh.
That's what we're talking about. New elbows, new knees. We're not talking about other parts. They have restorative hardware for that. Okay.
Oh boy.
We went through the non-developer disclosure. We went through there. The buyers on the 3rd page, the request for documents. There's this little thing nobody pays attention to. We usually don't do it. Number 7, buyer's receipt of documents.
Oh, yeah, we gotta do that.
Complete and check
On that day.
if they've required it. There's another little paper that they can sign, or if for constructive notice, it can simply be you emailed it over to the buyer,
Yeah.
and you've got proof that the buyer got it. That's when the clock starts ticking.
Yeah.
But that you want to have it as clear as possible. And this is not always the best. I mean, really,
Receipt.
yeah. You know, just, hey, can you just shoot me back an email, say, hey, I got them. That's perfect. And I like that way better than a form.
Yeah.
It'll always hold up. Common elements and parking, that can be ugly, right, Tim? Do you have parking issues at where you're at? Do you own them as opposed to getting the right to use them?
Some have assigned parking in their carports, but and that's for mansards and terraces. For verandas, you have a garage. That's your assigned parking in your garage, and you're allowed 1 guest spot. So if you have 2 vehicles, you use it. Otherwise, it's open parking. That example. Right?
Yeah, so and that's it. Some people think they own it
Oh yeah.
as opposed to a parking space being a common element. And it could be, especially in high rises where there's undercover garages.
Yeah.
They may own those. They may have to pay for them.
I've run into condos where they're deeded to a property, where some of them are deeded 1 or 2, depending on what they made. And I rented a place when I first came down to Florida where I was assigned a parking space and I had a second vehicle. I had to make a deal with one of the tenants to rent the space, so. They do exist, and those aren't that old. Those were built in '07, so.
Yeah, that's what they do.
And a garage space that you purchase can change the value of your condo. And you also want to know if you can rent it, or if you can sell it. You know, can you sell it? And if you sell it, does it have to be to somebody who owns in that building, or can you sell it to an outside person? You know, so that's where you want to read the condo docs and stuff. So those are a lot of questions that you want to bring up with your customer. How many spots do you really truly need? You know, do you have a truck? Do you have a motorcycle? You know, what do you intend? You have a trailer boat, you know, ski? Are you going? Do you want to put that in your parking garage? All that can really cause havoc. I mean,
Boat slips too, like J.C. Park, there's older condos where they have boat slips that some people own, some people don't.
Oh, some people have signed, yeah. And that's it, just because it looks like it doesn't mean that that's true. And that's the last thing, think, oh yeah, you can park your boat here. Well, we forgot to read the documents that said, oh yeah, but you have to have permission from the association and you can only have so many feet. You know, and then there's, oh yeah, but John's been here for 25 years and you know, we just break the rules. So you got all that stuff. Okay, number 9, inspections and repairs. Just like in the paragraph, and it references paragraph 11 and 12 of the contract. So, and that's why you always want to match your contracts together. You don't want to use a Naples contract and then use this writer because it's not going to reference. So this references 11 and 12, which is about the seller maintaining the property in the way that it was the day that they saw it and went into contract. It is limited to what's in the condominium. So drywall in is the seller's. So if there is a leak in the wall, that's the association. But the drywall might be damaged, and whether it's an insurance issue or not, the seller actually has the responsibility to make sure that it can transfer over to the buyer, or the buyer understands that the association's fixing it, all that good stuff. But it ultimately is the seller to be responsible to it. And that sometimes we have to remind our seller, because they think, oh, if the toilet up above leaks and it, you know, the ceiling falls in, that's the association's problem, and I don't have to worry about it when I go to sell it. Yes, you do. And that's where our negotiation skills come in handy, because we can help facilitate. Yes.
I had a situation where my buyer was gonna get it turnkey, so I knew, go back in right away and take pictures of everything as it was. I went in the next day for an inspection. They had changed the curtains. They had changed a bunch of stuff. And we said, no.
No, that's a good point. And that's right. That's one of the reasons we have that you put in the full report with photos into app files, because that's what the buyer saw. I hate the words turnkey because it means different things to other people.
So
or you see the words
MLS.
fully furnished, I wouldn't even do that. I would go really far. I would either ask the seller to make an inventory list and provide it within so many days,
What does not convey.
and give the buyer the right to review, and accept or refuse. The other thing that you can do, like you're talking about pictures, you do that when you go to contract.
Correct.
Either if it looks exactly like the MLS, I would print it up and I would have the buyer initial and date that MLS and reference in as shown
MLS
on the
listing.
MLS photo,
Right.
listing attached, and make that part of the contract. It's a really, really strong way of doing it.
That's an excellent idea.
Thank
you.
I would do that. But make that if you're the listing agent and they want to sell turnkey, get an inventory. Because I mean, even though we've got photos in the MLS, it doesn't show all the pots and pans, and it's amazing what people will do. Yeah, we had one. They completely changed the furniture out, completely, and they did it the day before closing. The day before closing, the buyers went to do their final walkthrough, and it was totally different furniture. Totally different. Not that it was any worse, but it wasn't what the buyer saw.
How did it end up? Did they close or not?
We made the seller swap the furniture back. He had another unit.
Put it back,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we made them flip it back.
Sometimes you gotta get model and serial numbers off of the washer and dryer and everything.
That's a good point.
It's a really good idea to do
That's a
that.
real good point.
Take photos.
Yeah.
Of the little tag.
Yeah, you'll see inside like a dryer door right by the door. Like,
The home
take-
inspectors are really good about doing that.
Yeah,
When they
inspectors do that, yeah.
Yeah, they're really good about
Home
that.
team's good.
Let them do it. Let them do it. You know, but take the photos so you
Don't
can.
bank on them doing it.
Well-
My last listing was partially furnished,
Mhm.
and then I had them create what does not convey, because there was things they were gonna take with them. And when the buyers came in, they were like, oh, don't even worry about it. And they were like, what's the matter? Because they were talking about certain things on the county, you're welcome to take. They're like, don't worry about it, because we're gutting the place. Everything that was left was removed and sent to like Teen Challenge, they showed up, and all these other places for donations, and they literally gutted the place.
That's the best
And the
thing.
sellers were like, oh my gosh, really? Because now I started thinking, well.
Oh,
I could have taken this or that.
yeah.
Right, exactly,
Yeah,
right? I
right.
mean, so, but we got through it, I worked with them and said, okay, we actually got a couple things out of it,
Yeah.
which was nice.
Yeah, and be careful with your sellers too, because we had one where they had this thing with blue birds somewhere, and that was it was an exception in the contract. It was like the 3 blue birds and this blue painting or something was in there. Well, it turned out there were more bluebird things in there, and the seller took everything that was a bluebird thing.
Yep.
You know, it was in the photo of the MLS
Yeah.
that the buyer had initialed and the seller
Oh.
had initialed. So I was like, where is the blanket? And they had a fight. The freaking
Over blue.
$5 blanket, you know. I was like, they said they were gonna give it.
Well,
It's,
meaning to a bluebird.
it's amazing how people will get over that kind of stuff. So you're right. I mean, be as careful as you can with that kind of stuff. And that's the importance, again, of having a final walkthrough. And we don't want to do the final walkthrough for our customer. If they're not here, I mean, and you do go, then you're just gonna do a video. You know,
Yeah.
take photos and
Yeah.
send it to them
Yeah.
and have them sign that final walkthrough inspection form. Or better yet, have a relative,
Yeah.
a cousin, somebody that they trust to come and look. Or pay the home inspector, or pay somebody to go and do it.
Yeah,
Because I might miss something, I might
Yeah.
forget to open a cabinet, you
well,
know.
I had to do the final walkthrough, and fortunately I did. And I have a fairly keen eye, and we had the list of the stuff that stays and that doesn't stay, and sure enough, I go into the guest bedroom, where's the bed?
Oh my gosh,
I go into the den, it's like, what happened to the Murphy bed stuff? So
oh
they
geez.
took it. Fortunately, they put it into storage, and I called the listing agent and said, hey, these kind of things are missing here, and that was, oh yeah, you're right. So they did, they came back and honored it, which was good, so it went okay. But at first I'm like, oh boy, here we go, right?
That's when we do a lot of negotiations,
Don't know.
like how much,
Don't know.
yeah, how much credit are you gonna get from the seller for this and that? And,
Oh,
you know, or they'll forget. I mean, we had a fight at closing over a piece of Battenberg lace.
I remember you telling
I was,
me that.
to this day, it just drives me freaking nuts. They were fighting over a $50 piece of lace curtain thing. Oh my God, you know.
Well, I've done things
So
where
you
an
never know.
inspection comes in, they say, hey, you don't have the burst-free hoses on your washer machine, there's an outlet that isn't GFI in the garage, I got it.
Yeah.
Let's just move forward, I document it, I go purchase it, I put it at home next to the bottle of champagne and whatever else you're giving them.
Yeah.
And they just say, I've got it, we're all set, let's just move forward. I'm like, okay.
We all
It's
do.
worth doing those kind of things versus,
Mhm.
oh geez, now we gotta worry about it.
Pay for a
$25
cleaner. I
GFI.
think that's one of the nicest things
Yeah.
you can do is pay for a cleaner
Yeah, yeah.
for them to come in. You know, that can be really, really nice. But that's it. It's all about, that's where we really work hard,
Mhm.
especially on condos, because
Yeah.
there's so much stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, milestone inspection reports, structural integrity reserve study, turnover inspection reports, yucky, yucky, yucky.
And that's on buildings that have 3 floors or higher.
There are 3 floors, 25 years or older.
20, right.
And they haven't gotten really specific as they're tweaking these laws. If you have garage and then first floor, second floor condo, is that a 3-story condo?
Wasn't it 30 years? That was 30 years.
There's 25 and 30 years.
Okay.
And they have, but if in doubt, assume it is. So you have to check it. You only check one.
Yeah.
And again, it's the seller, it's not and you can see it in bold, is not required to have completed a milestone inspection report. So if it's a 2-story condo,
Yeah.
they are not required to have completed a milestone inspection report.
Right.
But it also gives them the opportunity, they haven't completed such an inspection, or have they, so that the buyer is aware of what's going on. The turnover inspection report, we only have to worry about if you're selling something new. When the developer is turning over the control of the association to the owners. That's when the turnover is in.
Okay.
And-
Neighborhood zone.
And Florida law, and that's on any condo, 2 stories, 1 story, everything. Florida law now requires that they do a turnover inspection report. So before it was if they didn't want to do it, but now they have to do it. That puts the feet to the fire of the developer to not hide things.
Right,
And
right.
that has been a pattern of a lot of developers, and then these associations get stuck with hundreds of thousands of dollars of problems.
Yeah, right. Something
And-
like Babcock Ranch.
Yeah.
You know.
And most owners don't realize, like, when they're counting their pennies, like, oh my God, a turnover inspection report is going to cost $5,000 per unit. I'm just, again, it's going to cost them at least $1,000. I mean, minimum. So it's going to cost them serious money. It's not in the budget or the financials usually, but they have to know that it's coming up. Again, we don't sell that many new condos. We don't have that many
Right.
built. Most
Right.
of them are apartments now instead of condos.
Well,
They will be condos.
Well, I have an example of a new property that just went up. My buyers are interested, and the selling agent basically says, hey man, when you send in the as-is, with proof of funds and blah, 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 also include the addendum AA, which is, does the selling agent have interest in the property, right? The flood disclosure, the riders, and the seller's disclosure. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's on the seller's side. I need to see the flood disclosure from the seller, as well as the rider's information, and does the agent have interest in the property?
Yes.
So then I looked and saw all the documents, and guess what? It says there's the flood disclosure, it's not. It's the flood policy. So I'm gonna have to deal with this in the next couple of days and say, dude, what are you doing here, man, right? So you need to have those signed and ready to go. I mean, I don't mind doing the riders, because I know it's right around the corner.
Right, we always assume the
I
agents
figured
don't know what
that
they're
out,
doing.
But, and I get the docs and all that, but it's just so funny how this guy is saying, you gotta submit all this, and it's like, well, you need to provide that to us. Because they may look at the seller's disclosure and say, uh-oh, the wash and dry doesn't work.
Yeah, poor trading, and that's really what it comes down to.
It's one of the major brokerages too.
Yeah, and it's a
you
shame,
know.
but it's a shame.
Mhm.
And we've got so many new agents
Yeah.
that are out there and they're not getting trained,
No.
and they're just running rampant, and
And
they're
they don't have the support that they do at Jones & Co.
No, thank you so much for that.
That's part of your commercial.
There you go, a little commercial, yeah. Yeah, because like that flood disclosure, I'm hammering it all over the place. I mean, it is and it really is kind of stupid when you think about it for a lot,
Yeah.
for a piece of land, but it's required.
Mhm.
That vacant land disclosure is maybe overkill, but when you get sued once, then it's no longer overkill. I mean, and we've got owls and eagles and
Well,
scrub
yeah.
jays and all kinds of stuff, and sellers who have never seen their property before, let's put it onto them. You can go and walk it and look at it, and you can, if you see an owl there, you can say, well, you know what, I think there might be an owl there. You need to call Florida Wildlife or somebody and have them
Right.
look at it, even though we know that it's an owl or we know it's a turtle. Let's not tell the seller, I saw an owl on your property, and then the owl's gone the next day.
Well, I mean, you go east of 75, it's all farm country, and you know what? Those areas still get flooded, and if you don't know, you go by it, and all of a sudden you're trying to build a house, and they perk it and all this other stuff, it's like, oops.
Yeah, there's wetlands everywhere. Even when you don't, New Jersey's famous for wetlands.
Right.
Who would, you don't normally think of Jersey as wetlands. I grew up in a Chicago suburb, and we actually, I guess we had wetlands, we got flooded.
Yeah, our home in Massachusetts was on top of Fay Mountain, and our back half acre, 2 or 3 acres we had, was considered wetland because it was the beginnings of a creek that started.
Okay.
So we have to be aware that there's, wetlands back, they never flooded, but still they have to be told.
You have to be told, and then there's always
Environmental
mitigation
considerations
and all of that
I
stuff.
can't,
And
Dunkin'
we're,
Donuts there.
I mean, that's the really cool part about our coast, way more than the East Coast, is we are so environmentally sensitive, which is cool, which is why people come. They like the owls, the eagles, the, you know, the coyotes that run through the neighborhood and meet their little dogs, you know. They like,
The alligators.
and alligators, you know, or the bears that lay out in the middle of the road. Did you see that one on TV this morning?
No.
This bear was just relaxing out in a pathway, just rolling. He's like hanging out with his legs up, and people are walking down the path. And he's like, "Oh yeah, hi, how you doing?" He's just laying there, and it's mating season, so everybody's on the move, you know. But that's why people like coming over here, because we've got all that fun, cool stuff happening, you know. And I always try to make light of it and make fun. Oh yeah, we've got stuff. If you see a bear, don't go outside. Don't be stupid, you know. You see an alligator in your pool? Look through the sliding glass door. Call Florida Wildlife.
Right.
Don't go out there and invite them in, or, you know, see how do you like some lunch? You know, it tastes really good with salt and pepper. So, structural integrity reserve study, it's the same kind of stuff. And we're not going through, you know, I'm not going to go through all that. Ugh.
No.
Okay,
Multiple parcel building.
on to page 4 of 4. Okay, D, check only one box below if the association has completed. This is all milestone stuff. So just get all the way through it until you get to number 11. Condos created within a portion of a building or within a multiple parcel building. Okay. If applicable, the following disclosure is provided for condos created within a portion of a building or within a multiple parcel, blah, 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 blah. That's like multiple associations. Who pays for what and who owns what? That's basically what it says. They may have minimal common element. You know, they may only have the plumbing in the wall as a common element. They may not have permission to go use the tennis courts, things like that. That's what all that's in. It doesn't happen very often, but it's been a problem in other parts of Florida.
JJ,
And hence it's very important because it's in black and bold and caps.
JJ, I have a question, right? So we
Sure.
went through that milestone inspection report, and I get that you click one off and say they haven't done it yet, or they're in the process of it, but then you go to section D, and basically you have two options. One is, hey, I've been provided a copy, or they're working, you know.
That's only if they've completed the milestone.
Right, and then the next one is, well, but now the buyer has the right to say, look, if you haven't gotten it done by our close date, or projected close date, that they could cancel it. They could cancel the contract. That's what that really means.
That's what that whole
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
section is,
Yeah,
right?
I just want to make sure, so that's something that, when you're in that situation and they're working on it, and we've got a close date that's whatever, end of the month,
Yeah.
but now they're taking their time or dragging their feet, and now we're getting to the
That's-
close date, and they haven't done it, but we check that off.
That's when we negotiate, that's when you
Yeah.
negotiate out into an addendum, you know.
You would addendum it and move your close date out as long as you.
Either that, or if, you know, buyer is aware that milestone inspection report is due to be finished by
Right,
blank,
yeah,
And they still agree to close, then
yeah.
then, you know, then the buyer is gonna be assuming responsibility.
So you
for
have
that.
an addendum for that,
You
right?
probably would want to, and
Or
we
there-
won't write it, then we'll make an attorney write that.
Because there should be like an exception form or something.
Something like that, yeah. They don't have that right now.
Okay,
That might be something Florida Realtors would address, but usually if you call the legal hotline and you ask, they are going to tell you to have an attorney write it.
so that's when I call you and say, hey, JJ, we need our attorney to kind of write something.
Exactly,
Exception.
because you don't want it, when it comes to that kind of stuff, you don't even want to venture into that area. It's a little bit different than writing
Yeah.
furniture and
Yeah.
simple little things like seller to repair the hot water heater and inspected by a licensed contractor within so many days. That's pretty simple, straightforward, and we can do that. You know, I feel comfortable with that, but when you get into this kind of stuff where it's all legal and it's Florida laws and stuff like that, we do not want to be involved in it. And I think that as we get nearer to the end of the year and not everyone's been able to meet their requirements by the end of the day, then maybe Florida law might even step in and make some exceptions to that. And they already are addressing those kinds of things because there is a legitimate concern that they won't all be able to get it all done. They've only got so many inspectors. So
Yeah.
that could be something that's done. We get through all the disclosure summary, all right, and that's that. That's the condo right.
Really good.
I mean, there's a lot in here.
Good. There is.
And usually we just ignore it and we just do the first page.
Oh, yeah. Kind of gets mechanical.
Yeah, I mean, if you can take the a little condo class, I think it's really, really helpful. When I started to sell condos, I went and I got my condo association management license.
Yeah,
Where do you get
I
that?
took the course.
Becker is a legal firm. Can you do it through
You can get it through Larson.
Larson? Yeah.
You can also get it through FSW.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
You can get college credit. That's what I did.
Yeah.
I want some college credit. Yeah, so you can do that. It just helps because
Then Larson has it too?
they
Okay.
usually
Yeah, they have a CAM. I know that.
they have a CAM licensing.
Okay.
It's pretty simple. I think a couple days.
Yeah.
It's not much to it, but it is kind of cool because it really gives you an in-depth
Yeah.
workings of how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because you have a CAM license, the odds of you making any money with being a CAM are negligible in the state of Florida because there's so many people that have it.
Yeah.
You know,
But you have pointers where to go to get information. That's the whole thing.
That's it, yeah.
Versus kind of, I'm not gonna go find it, right?
who does what and all that. The board of directors thing is a class.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to pay for it. I
That's
think
free.
Mine was free.
The state of Florida provides it
Yeah.
for free, and anybody can take it. And I think it's a really good idea to take those kind of
And
things.
CAI is one of the association, community association institute. They're offering it.
Oh,
They're one of the providers.
oh, that's cool. Send me that information. I'll post it. I'll put it up on.
Okay.
I haven't taken it.
What class is that?
It's the HOA board of, if you're a volunteer on a board, then you need to take a class within 30 days or 60 days,
You're
like
elected.
your
That's-
appointment.
Within 60 days.
But they're having a class on June 30th and they're having one July 6th. And you can go to
And what's the name of the thing?
DBPR
Yeah, yeah.
If you go to DBPR and you look for
and
for the condo governance, what are you looking for?
I would just stick it in Google, you'll find
One
it.
is if you're like on a master board. With some master
You can go to
systems. One is if
ChatGPT
they're-
also, it's
Right,
got there.
yeah.
That's
Google
where I
it,
got
AI
mine.
it, but they know more than we do.
Yeah.
Look it
If you're
up.
on a-
ChatGPT will tell you where it is. Just ask by state of Florida and who's the providers, and it'll spit it all out.
And they can do all that. There you go.